Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Where Cancel Culture is Taking Us. So for those of you that don't know, this week there was a new news channel that has started broadcasting in the United Kingdom. This news channel is called GBNews, or Great Britain News, with Andrew Neil heading it, who you may know from BBC's This Week with Michael Portillo and Andrew Neil, and as the man who is basically every politician's worst nightmare for interviews. He's so good at his job that Boris Johnson didn't even bother getting interviewed by him for the last election, because he thinks it will have been more harm than good, and it probably would be, because that's how good of an interviewer he is. And for those of you that don't know, this came about because Andrew Neil wasn't happy with the BBC and other broadcasters in the UK with how they handled their news. They thought it was overly biased, in favour of, at the very least, the left wing, but he also thought it went quote-unquote woke, which I think everyone watching this channel will probably agree with. So it's not really supposed to be this uber right-wing, get all the immigrants out, we want Brexit now type channel. It's more a channel of almost just normal objective news with some explicit anti-woke programmes as well. I believe there's one with Andrew Doyle called Media Watch, in which Andrew Doyle points out where the woke are going mental this week. It's a bit like a 20-30 minute kind of YouTube stream, pointing out, hey, these people have been cancelled, hey, the woke are now putting this in schools, things like that, things that your average normie will not see on the BBC. And all in all, I think that's a good thing. Is it perfect? No. Are you going to get perfection on the mainstream media? No. So it's good enough. And what makes me think it's even better than good enough is the fact that the leftists have been going nuts over it. So, from the Times, adverts pulled from the new channel GBNews. Andrew Neil hosted the channel's opening programme, and he hosted a hell of a lot more than that too. Some of the world's largest brands have suspended advertising on GBNews in the latest setback for the fledgling right-leaning news channel. Nivea, Grolsch, I don't know what Grolsch is. The Open University, IKEA and the Swedish cider maker Kopparberg have said that they will not advertise. The insular LV said that it would review its position. The campaign group Stop Funding Hate urged advertisers not to support the channel. Some companies said that they were unaware that they were going to appear on GBNews and suspended their adverts when they found out. Advertising sales for GBNews are managed by Sky Media, Sky's advertising arm, which negotiates on behalf of its own channel and third parties. So it does appear that some companies didn't realise they would be advertising on GBNews because they didn't realise that their advertising agencies were going through Sky Media. So I do believe that some of them didn't think this was going to happen. But do they really think that GBNews is this big, hateful channel, live on air, that got past Ofcom? Really? No, this is obviously nothing short of a virtue signal. I mean, one of the first programmes that GBNews did was on different parts of the areas of the UK, calling this thing different names. In the Midlands, sometimes they call it a cob. In the south, I think they call it a roll. I don't know, but I know up north it's called a barm, sometimes a sarnie. The channel began broadcasting on Sunday, promising to fight cancel culture and reflect voices not heard in the media. Andrew Neil, chairman of The Spectator and former BBC journalist, hosted the opening programme. The channel has been beset by challenges, including technical glitches, and has claimed that the BBC and other competitors have tried to frustrate its launch. Neither GBNews nor Sky could be reached for comment. Now, on this point, because for some reason the Times don't go into detail on these what I would call very important points, what the BBC and other competitors were trying to do is that in the UK at least there's kind of a media pool for news broadcasters where kind of generic footage of news that's going on, so say it'll be a photograph of the Prime Minister coming out of Downing Street, a video of him walking to the podium and video of him also giving speeches and things like that. They'd be put in a pool and different broadcasters could just take those images and those videos and put them in for their own use for broadcasting. And the BBC and Sky News try to push GBNews out of that pool, which would frustrate their launch and frustrate their ability to actually put forward the news. So with all this going on, it is very clear that the mainstream media is very scared of this, and quite clearly a lot of advertisers have a lot of idiots within their company pushing for them to not advertise on what is essentially basically the voice of the normie. Because that's what GBNews is, and that's a good thing, because the normies really don't have a voice when it comes to the rest of the mainstream media. But back on to these idiots working for these companies. I think, obviously, some of the Twitter accounts were trying to go out and virtue signal saying, oh, we didn't know it was going to happen, we're going to review, oh, we don't want to fund hate, things like this, things that generally people don't care about and won't base their purchases on. Well, I want to go through some of the funnier anecdotes here. So, first one's off Copperberg. Well, first, there was a Twitter account called Deplorable Bristolian, and he said this list of advertisers is on GB News and was helpfully compiled by the far left extremists who wish to censor what we watch. I'm sure all my friends and followers would like to retweet to show their support for the organisations who support freedom of speech and the free press. So all of this is saying thank you to these tagged accounts, and obviously one of them was Copperberg. And Copperberg decided to reply with this. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We want to make it clear to everyone that our ads run on this channel without our knowledge or consent. Copperberg is a drink for everyone, and we've immediately suspended our ads from this channel pending further review of its content. Yes, it's the classic thing. It's like reading any Guardian article. Within a sentence they've contradicted themselves. Quite clearly, Copperberg is a drink for everyone, unless you agree with the voice of the normie. And there was another funny anecdote that came specifically from Vodafone. So, a Twitter account called Marcus Walker said, good heavens, a friend just asked Vodafone on their app why they had cancelled their advertising on GB News, and this was their response. Apparently it was due to this TV channel promising to combat so-called cancel culture, which kind of implies that Vodafone are for cancelling people, which to me would be an odd thing for a company to do. However, they were quite quick to respond with this. We are sorry for this comment, it doesn't reflect our views. We believe in free speech while standing against hateful content. I mean, that is a big we are for free speech, but political views are varied and we place our adverts in a broad spread of outlets. We haven't boycotted GB News. However, we wouldn't choose to advertise on a new channel, preferring instead to wait to make a commercial assessment of its quality and reach. With GB News still, it is in its infancy, and we do not have plans to advertise with it at this stage. So, to me, that screams that may have been our views at that point, but now we need to make sure that we don't look like intolerant twats. On the other hand, if they start putting their adverts on GB News again, then fair enough. So, with all this news of advertisers deciding not to advertise on GB News, there were obviously a lot of leftists who were very happy about this, and they were voicing their support on Twitter. But the most interesting one I think I found was by a person called Jack Dart. Now, Jack Dart is a Liberal Democrat councillor for Torbay Council. And obviously, if you've got the word Liberal in your name, more than likely you're going to be celebrating free speech. Not Jack Dart, though. He said, so far on day 4 of GB News, a total of 10 companies have pulled their advertisements. Today's list was Specsavers and Vodafone. Yesterday was OVO Energy, Copperberg, Octopus Energy, Indeed, IKEA, Nivea, Grolsch, and the Open University. Hashtag don't fund GB News. So yeah, don't vote Liberal Democrats if you support freedom of speech. It turns out that their councillors are more than happy to have your funding cut and be an activist to take your money away in unjust ways. Because these companies were happy to advertise on GB News beforehand. But of course, when you have a bunch of shit-eating leftists on Twitter shouting and screaming at these advertisers to quote-unquote stop funding hate, the hateful content I'm still yet to see, then these people are essentially being coerced by a mob. Because I know I keep hearing people saying, oh, Twitter isn't real life, who cares? No, Twitter is real life. How many things have you seen on Twitter being pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, only for one advertiser like this to take their advertisements off GB News and other channels on YouTube and things like that? And also, how many ideas have you seen pop up on Twitter only for them to, less than a year later, be fairly mainstream? Extinction Rebellion was pretty much born off Twitter. That's where they make all the connections and then connect in real life to make all their stupid protests. So to say it's not real life, I think is quite naive. Unfortunately, it is real life, and that's why I try and be active on it and tell leftists when they're being idiots. But anyway, with all this going on, and obviously GB News standing against cancel culture that they are now completely suffering from, like, thanks leftists, you have just proved them right that there is a problem with this. Andrew Neil introduced his show last night with this message for them. Apologies for the audio, somehow it's worse than mine.
Welcome back. Tonight, a Media Watch special. We ask companies boycotting GB News for peddling hate. What on earth are you talking about?
See, this is what I appreciate about GB News. It feels almost like a YouTube drama channel sometimes, which I live for. And the normies will really like this as well, because a lot of normies do actually not like cancel culture and don't like the fact that people will pull advertisements just because a Twitter mob told them they should. So I think the average normie is going to appreciate Andrew Neil looking sternly at a camera, basically telling off multinational companies for pulling advertisements on them.
Now, since GB News launched on Sunday night, our young and diverse team of reporters across the country have covered Nissan's plans to invest more in Sunderland, regeneration of Skegness.
And it goes on for literally another minute or so, just describing the standard news stories that you have heard on GB News, eventually to point this out.
Now, some of these stories you won't see on other news channels. All of them are important to the communities involved, and not a scintilla of hate in any of them.
Yes, Andrew Neil really is pointing out the big flaw when it comes to the rhetoric of saying that it's got hate, in that, one, it doesn't have any hate, but with leftists, basically anything outside of the progressive lens, the leftist lens, the critical race theorist lens, is racist. Not being anti-racist is racist. Being colourblind is racist, and things like this. So Andrew Neil being objective with his news channel, or as objective as it can be, is apparently hateful, racist, bigoted, whatever. And Andrew Neil is having absolutely none of it. And I can imagine an average normie really, really getting engaged with the way he's delivering his message here.
Indeed, the only hate this channel has broadcast was when we showed film of a BBC Newsnight reporter being attacked by a baying anti-lockdown mob, and we condemned that unreservedly.
Now, when it comes to Andrew Neil's description of this incident where he says this man was attacked by an anti-lockdown mob, I don't think that's entirely fair to say that he was attacked. He's certainly getting harassed. And I am absolutely with Andrew Neil when he says this should be entirely condemned. Because this isn't how we should act to journalists, no matter how much they lie, no matter how bad they are at their job. Don't do this. Not only does it give them all the ammunition they need, but it's morally wrong. You would not be happy if someone from quote-unquote our side was treated like this. So you shouldn't be accepting it from quote-unquote your side either. Anyway, that's enough radical centrism. Back to Andrew Neil.
Yet a number of companies, some of them well-known brands, have decided to stop advertising on GB News. They've bowed to pressure from a fringe group called Stop Funding Hate, a misnomer if ever there was one.
I hope you see what I mean about this, though. He is directly calling out, by name, the activist group who is causing his problems, and doing it in an unjustified way. And obviously he's pointing out that they're hypocritical, but unfortunately when it comes to accusations of hypocrisy, it only really matters when it comes from your side. Because ultimately, leftists really don't care when you point out that they're being hypocritical, because all they really care about is power. And with Stop Funding Hate having the power to take advertisements off mainstream news channels, they're just going to be fine with being hypocrites about it. But, as I say, the average normie will appreciate this, which is kind of the demographic that GB News is after anyway, so everything about this is good. But I think at this point, if you want to see the rest of that, link is in the description as usual, but you get the idea with that. He goes on like that for another 3 minutes or so, and then talks to Andrew Doyle about cancel culture again. It's really good. The average normie might not know these things. Really good for them to be informed on a mainstream news channel, because you literally hear it from nowhere else. On the mainstream, I mean. When it comes to the internet, obviously we all know about this. But we really have to get in the minds of the normies, I think, and GB News is a really good gateway to get them to us. So yeah, if you live in Britain and someone in your family is someone you wouldn't necessarily describe as woke, but is definitely a normie, probably good to try and encourage them to watch GB News. I mean, you know, they're good most of the time. As I say, they're not perfect for the YouTube sphere, but the YouTube sphere is severely autistic. And most normies are not autistic. So yes, I would tell your normie friends, relatives, whoever, that GB News is a good source of news, at least from television, since most of them are quite adverse to coming onto the internet and getting their news from channels like mine or the Lotus Eaters or anyone else like that. Which is completely understandable, to be honest. You do try and go with tried and tested means, but the average normie is about 30 years behind us, so their trust in the media is still high enough to watch television. So we may as well get them to the best news channel they can find. But that's everything I had for you today, so as usual, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.